still remember the sound the tires made as they bit into the gravel road. That long, slow climb up the mountain, the wind pressing against the truck, the pines whispering, like they recognized me. It had been 12 years since I'd last seen the place. 12 years since my grandfather's funeral. And yet, when I turned the final bend and the house came into view, my heart still knew how to ache. The old mountain house stood where it always had, surrounded by fog and pine, shingles missing, porch sagging, the kind of silence that swallows your breath before you can take it. But then I noticed something strange. A light. Warm, yellow, moving. Someone was inside. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the reflection of my headlights on the glass. But when I killed the engine, the glow stayed, flickering softly through the front window. I stepped out. The air was sharp and cold enough to sting my lungs. The gravel crunched under my boots. Everything smelled like pine needles, rust and rain. I walked up to the porch slowly, scanning every corner. The boards groaned under my weight, and that's when I saw it, a brand new padlock on the door, heavy, silver, not mine. Someone had locked me out. There was a piece of paper taped to the doorframe, old, wrinkled, but still legible under the porch light. Private property. Trespassers will be reported. No name. Just a phone number written in black ink. I stood there for a long second, just listening. The forest was too quiet. No birds. No crickets. Only the faint hum of electricity from inside my house. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number. 1 ring. 2. Then a rough voice answered. "Who's this?" "This is Ethan Cole," I said. "I'm at 74 Ridgeway Pass, my property." Silence, then a low laugh. "You must be mistaken, pal. This place belongs to the Millers now. Bought it fair and square 3 years ago." "I have the deed," I told him. "It's under my name." "Then take it up with the county," he said. "But if you step foot on this property again, you'll be talking to the sheriff, not me." He hung up. For a long time, I just stood there. My reflection stared back at me from the window, a ghost looking in on its own past. The porch light flickered, and behind the curtain, a shadow moved. Someone was really inside. I turned back toward the truck, my hands shaking, anger starting to bloom in my chest. I'd waited years to come back. I'd saved every dollar to renovate this house, restore it, turn it into what my grandfather always wanted. And now strangers were living in it, under a fake claim. By the time I reached town, the sun was climbing. I parked outside the county recorder's office, a small, beige building that smelled like dust and bureaucracy. The clerk looked up as I approached the counter. Her name tag read, Marta. Her smile was polite, but tired. "I'd like to confirm the ownership of a property," I said. She nodded and started typing. "Address? 74 Ridgeway Pass." Her expression changed. Frown lines formed between her brows. "Huh. Says here it was sold 3 years ago. To a Jonathan and Claire Miller." My heart sank. "That's impossible. I inherited that property." "I have the deed right here." I handed her the folder I'd brought. My grandfather's original papers, notarized, sealed. She flipped through them slowly, lips pursed. "This looks legitimate," she said, "but according to our database, there's a newer transfer record." I leaned closer. "Who authorized it?" She hesitated, typed a few more keys, then her voice dropped. "It was signed off by Sheriff Daniel Rowe." I felt my pulse thud in my ears. "The sheriff?" She nodded. "That's what it says. He co-signed the condemnation notice before the sale." Condemnation notice? Apparently the property was listed as unsafe, condemned and auctioned. I swallowed hard. "Do you have a copy?" Her eyes darted toward the back room. "I could get in trouble for printing this." "Marta," I said softly. "Someone stole my family's home. Please." She hesitated, then pressed print. 3 sheets slid out, warm from the machine. She handed them to me quietly. "Keep it quiet," she whispered. I stepped outside, the papers fluttering in the cold wind. The dates didn't make sense. The so-called condemnation order was filed after my father's death, 3 weeks after, to be exact. And the tax code written on it didn't match the property. ID, fake, completely fake. That's when I realized this wasn't some clerical mistake. This was theft, coordinated and deliberate, and the sheriff himself was in on it. I drove back up the Mountain that night. No lights this time. I parked 100 yards away and hiked through the trees. Snow had started to fall, soft, slow, silent. The house looked different. The roof was repaired, the porch painted, the carved wooden sign my grandfather had made, Coal Cabin, 1954, was gone. In its place, a shiny brass plate read, "The Miller's Retreat." I watched through the trees. Inside, I saw them, Jonathan, Claire, and a teenage boy, eating dinner, laughing like it was theirs. My phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "We saw your car. Leave before we call the police." Turned off my phone, then waited until every light inside went dark. I crept closer. My flashlight stayed off. The snow crunched softly beneath me. I found the old cellar door behind the porch. The hinges squealed as I lifted it open. Inside, it smelled of dirt and mildew. I shone a small light, just enough to see. Boxes, dozens of them. But one caught my eye. An old wooden crate labeled Coal Estate Deeds. It was empty. Someone had taken everything, every scrap of ownership, every proof of legacy, gone. I took pictures, the new locks, the brass sign, the electric meter showing recent activation, evidence. When I climbed back out, a flashlight hit me square in the chest. "Who the hell are you?" a voice shouted. A man stood at the porch steps, shotgun in hand. "Jonathan Miller." I raised my hands. "This is my property," I said, voice shaking but steady. "You're trespassing." He stepped closer, his eyes narrow and cold. "Your property? You must be out of your damn mind." He cocked the shotgun. "You come back here again, you won't walk away next time." Behind him, the woman, Claire, appeared at the door, her face pale, her eyes wide, not anger, fear. "Jonathan," she whispered. "Please." He didn't look at her. He just pointed the gun again. "Go." I backed away step by step until I reached the truck. The sound of the safety clicking off followed me through the dark. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there, breathing hard, hands trembling on the wheel. They'd taken my house. They'd threatened my life, and they thought that was the end of it. They were wrong. Pause. Snowstorm ambience swells slightly, then fades, because I wasn't going to fight them in the dark anymore. Next time I came back, I'd have the law, the evidence, and the truth on my side. And when I did, the mountain would remember who it really belonged to. The next morning, I drove into town with one thought looping through my head. They forged my deed. Someone in that little town's chain of power had erased my name, my family, my history, and replaced it with theirs. I parked outside the sheriff's department, the one-story brick building that had probably seen more gossip than justice. A blue flag flapped lazily out front. The paint on the walls was chipped, and yet, that badge on the window still glowed like a threat. Inside, the air smelled of coffee and printer ink. The receptionist looked up from her desk, chewing gum like she owned the place. "Sheriff Rowe in?" I asked. She squinted. "Who's asking?" "Ethan Cole." I showed her the property file. "I need to talk to him about my house." Her expression flickered. Something changed in her eyes. Quick, defensive. She picked up the phone and dialed an extension. "Sheriff. Guy here about the Ridgeway property." She hung up. "Go on back." Sheriff Rowe was sitting behind his desk reading a newspaper. Big man, broad shoulders, the kind of cop who looked more comfortable holding a beer than writing a report. He looked up when I entered. "Well, if it isn't the Cole boy," he said, smiling like a wolf. "Didn't think you'd ever come back." "I didn't think I'd need to," I replied, "until I found people living in my house." He chuckled. "I figured that's why you're here. Let's clear this up, huh?" He leaned back in his chair, fingers laced. "Your granddad's place was condemned years ago. Unsafe foundation, black mold, fire risk, all that. County sold it in an auction. Miller's got it fair and legal." "That's a lie," I said, tossing the fake documents on his desk. "These signatures aren't county format. And this one," I pointed to the bottom line, "has your name forged on it." His eyes hardened. "You calling me a forger?" "Son, I'm calling you a thief with a badge." He rose from his chair slowly. "You might want to watch that mouth of yours." "Cole, folks around here don't take kindly to outsiders making accusations. I'm not an outsider," I said quietly. This mountain's in my blood." He grinned, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Well then, maybe it's best you keep your blood away from other people's property." He picked up the papers and tore them in half right in front of me. "This meeting's over," he said. "Now get off my land." I drove away, shaking, not from fear, from rage. That kind that builds slow, deep, until it starts to hum beneath your skin. I stopped at a diner off the highway, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and sat there staring at the window, replaying every word he'd said. That's when an old man in a flannel jacket slid into the booth across from me. "Name's Albert," he said. "Used to work at the county surveyor's office." I blinked. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" He shook his head. "But I know you, and I know that house. I saw what they did." He glanced around, lowering his voice. "They forged that auction notice. Sheriff signed off after hours. Got paid under the table by a development company that never even existed." My stomach dropped. "Can you prove it?" He nodded slowly. "I kept the original records, the ones they deleted from the county system. Hidden them after I quit. Why? Because one day I knew someone like you would come asking." He pulled out a small flash drive and slid it across the table. "This is your proof. Every timestamp, every fake permit, every bribe." I stared at it like it was gold. "Why help me?" He smiled faintly. "Because your granddad helped me once. Fixed my roof for free when I couldn't afford the materials. Didn't ask for a thing in return. Now it's my turn." That night, I went back to my motel room, plugged the flash drive into my laptop. What I found made my blood run cold. Scanned copies of letters between the sheriff and a property attorney named Gregory. Hensley.emails timestamped at midnight, a wire transfer. Receipt from a company called Blue Ridge Holdings, showing a payment of $50,000, and attached digital copies of forged signatures. My father's name, my grandfather's name, even mine. Every line traced, copied, pasted, used to fake a legal transfer of ownership. This wasn't just theft, it was fraud, conspiracy, and forgery on county record. But it wasn't just the sheriff. There was one more signature, Jonathan Miller. He wasn't a random homeowner. He was in on it. I couldn't sleep that night, every time I closed my eyes. I saw my grandfather's hands, rough, steady, building that porch board by board. He taught me to drive on those dirt roads, taught me that a man's word, once signed, meant something. Now his name was being used by crooks. By the time the sun came up, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to the sheriff. I wasn't going to the local courts either. They were probably bought. I'd go higher, state level, real investigators. But before I did, I needed one more thing. Physical proof. Something from the property itself. A document, an object, anything with their fingerprints. So I planned my return. I parked off the main road and hiked the back trail to the house again. This time, I wore gloves and carried a body cam. It was quiet, too quiet. The Millers were gone that weekend, or so I'd heard in town. They'd driven down to the city. Perfect timing. I broke the padlock off the cellar door. Quiet. Careful. Inside, I started searching. Every drawer. Every shelf. In the back corner of the basement, behind a stack of paint cans, I found a metal filing box. Locked, rusty. I pried it open with a screwdriver. Inside, insurance papers, tax forms, and one document stamped with the seal of Blue Ridge Holdings and taped to the lid. A sticky note, written in hurried scrawl, "Keep these safe." Sheriff said burn originals. My pulse kicked up. I took photos of everything, every page, every logo, every date. That sticky note was my smoking gun. Then I froze. Footsteps. Someone was upstairs. I switched off my flashlight, heart pounding, breath shallow. Another step and another. Then, a voice. "Thought I told you not to come back." It was Jonathan. I ducked behind a support beam. Silent. His boots echoed overhead. He was searching. He knew someone was there. The door to the basement creaked open. Light spilled down the stairs. I pressed myself against the wall, gripping the screwdriver like a weapon. He descended slowly, one step at a time, shotgun in hand. "I warned you," he said, voice low. "You don't learn easy, do you?" My chest tightened. Every instinct told me to run, but I held still, waited. Then, from behind him, another voice, Claire's. "Jonathan, stop. Please, just come upstairs." He turned his head slightly, annoyed. "Go back inside, Claire." That moment, that 1 second of distraction, was all I needed. Moved fast, knocked the light switch. The bulb above us shattered. He shouted, "Fired!" The blast tore through the wall beside me. I bolted past, him in the dark, up the stairs through the living room. Out the front door, snow flying, heart hammering. Behind me, his voice roared, "You'll regret this, Cole. You're dead next time!" But I didn't look back. When I reached the motel, I collapsed into the driver's seat, hands trembling, adrenaline still roaring through my veins. I'd nearly died tonight, but I had what I needed. Photos, audio, timestamps, fingerprints, proof. The truth was on my side now, and as I sat there, watching the dawn break over the mountain ridge, I knew this was only the beginning. Next, I'd make sure every one of them, Rowe, Hensley, the Millers, would pay, not just with guilt, with law. And when that was done, I'd walk through the front door of my house again, and no one would ever take it from me. We moved with surgical quiet, like thieves who'd suddenly decided to be saints. Ray Nolan met me at the edge of town beneath a streetlight that hummed and flickered, the kind of light that reveals nothing and everything at once. He wore a long coat and that tired martial face. Years of seeing men fall had carved lines into his jaw. "You got nerve." "Cole," he said, but there was no mockery in it, only a kind of respect. "Dana." Reeves met us at the motel with folders stacked, like a small courthouse on her passenger seat. Her eyes skimmed the evidence, like a reader devouring the last chapter of a book. "Good work," she said, voice low. "Everything's here. Timestamps, transfers, the flash drive Albert gave you, the seller files, the note. Sheriff said burn originals." She passed the folders to Ray, then to me. "You realize what we're about to do," she warned, "isn't a bar fight. It's federal." I did. We'd spent weeks assembling a paper trail heavy enough to sink a ship. Forged deeds, counterfeit tax IDs, midnight wire transfers, receipts for Blue Ridge Holdings, and contracts that never existed other than on a server in a shell company's name. We had witnesses, Albert in the diner, Claire's trembling admissions, and the drone footage that showed the Millers using the property they had no right to. But evidence on a laptop and words in a report aren't enough to break a local machine of corruption. You need a confession. You need proof of intent. You need them to talk like criminals when they think nobody's listening. So Ray's plan was to create a room where they'd feel safe enough to show themselves for who they were. We set the bait. Dana drafted a permit application in limp legal prose. Cole Restoration LLC, proposed rehabilitation of condemned residential property, Ridgeway Pass parcel number 74, structural remediation, occupancy variance requested. It was the kind of paperwork that smelled like hope and litigation all at once. We filed it under my name and under the shell of the company I'd registered years before. Legal, clean, public. Then we waited. I watched the sheriff's reaction from a distance at first. Rowe called 3 times, 2 voicemails, each more conciliatory than the last, offering help while warning me away. We let him. Every call, every threat, every bribe print on the documents was logged by Ray's team. We had body cams hidden in my jacket, and Ray wore a recorder that sounded like a cheap pen to anyone who glanced his way. Claire, by then, had become a fragile ally. Dana had protected her with the quiet diplomacy lawyers learn in closed rooms. A protective petition filed anonymously, a promise of witness status, a counselor on retainer, and a hotel key that wouldn't show on any transaction linked to the Millers. She met me twice, under the ruse of returning a box of family things she'd found while clearing shelves. Her hands shook the first time I saw her. But what she whispered to me in the second meeting was all I needed. They were going to burn the papers, she said, eyes hollow. He said it would be easy. One more cleanup and the line of titles would look right. Everything would be sealed. I remember the way she said his name, like it had the power to fracture glass. We staged one more play. I called the sheriff's office openly, on record, pretending to be defeated, as if I'd given up. "You win," I said into my phone one afternoon, letting that stupid shallow olive branch dangle. He chuckled like a man who's already counted his money. "Good," he said. "Stay away from Ridgeway." Coal. What he didn't know was that while his chest swelled, federal agents were 2 counties over, waiting on a warrant sworn in under the weight of the evidence Dana had compiled. A grand jury had listened, quiet, impartial, and they'd authorized an investigation. The feds move slow, but they move deliberate, like avalanches when they decide to fall. The night of the sting, the mountain felt altered, hungry, expectant. Snow had dusted the trees with powdered light, and my breath smoked in front of me. Ray and I crouched in the shadow of a stand of pines while the drone hovered like an unblinking eye. "Remember," Ray whispered, "you don't have to be brave tonight. You just have to be still." In the living room, through the frosted windows, I could see shadows moving. 2 shapes. An older man's silhouette and a woman hunched over a cup. The sheriff's cruiser crept up a minute later. Headlights dim. I recognized the swagger in Roe even from the corn silk of his outline. The way he walked like a man who expects the road to yield to his will. He and Jonathan spoke on the porch, short words. "A shove, a whisper I could make out with the drone and Ray's mics. You gonna fix this like before?" Roe asked. Jonathan's voice was sharp. "We can handle it." "And the woman?" Roe asked more quietly. Jonathan hesitated. His reply was the one Dana had dreaded. "She's thinking about talking," he said. Roe's answer came like a flat stone striking water, same way we fixed Karen. "Bates," he said. The words cut through the night sharper than any gunshot would. I felt something in my chest. C's, equal parts sickness and vindication, because I'd always felt something uncanny about Karen's accidental fall years ago. The reports had been tidy, the investigator's notes quick, and her complaint had died before it could be heard. Now the pattern emerged like a scar. Ray gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. That's all we needed. Federal agents. "Hands where we can see them," a voice announced. And suddenly lights cut the world into fractured blues and reds. Roe froze. Jonathan lunged. The backyard erupted, agents moving with a choreography that looked violent and inevitable. I stepped out from the tree line as Dan Rowe spun toward me, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. "You set this up," he spat. "No," I said, voice steady because all the screaming in me had been wired into evidence. "You set yourself up." They cuffed him in a flurry of practiced moves. The metal clinked cold against my ears. Jonathan fought, stupid, panicked, until 2 agents pinned him to the snow. Claire came running out of the house as a small figure, her son clutched at her legs. "I didn't want this," she cried, collapsing into the arms of an agent who spoke softly and took her statement. Her words were recorded. Her hands were fingerprinted. Her story would become a sworn affidavit. Roe was given his Miranda rights like a benediction he'd never expected. And I watched him, a man whose badge had become a blank shield, lifted into an SUV between 2 federal officers. There was no theatrical speech from me, no triumphant gloating, just a long exhale as the mountains seemed to unclench. Ray clapped me on the shoulder like a man who trusted me with his life. "You did right," he said. I didn't know if right was the word I'd use. Justice felt more complicated, like a house that had been gutted and was slowly being rebuilt. By morning, the mountain smelled like an old wound being opened and cleaned. Reporters were already less than a mile away. Headlights like curious beetles. Federal agents took statements. Dana coordinated with the state attorney's office, ensuring every signature, every transfer, every midnight wire was preserved and submitted as evidence. We had possession orders and chain of custody forms. We had permits, revoked, falsified, and now footnoted in investigative reports. Most importantly, we had Claire's sworn statement, the sticky note that said, "Sheriff said burn originals," and the metal box from the cellar. We'd turned whispers into paper and paper into law. Roe's arraignment would come fast, and with it, the kind of public unspooling that corrodes reputations and corrodes alliances. But that night, when the stars watched and the house stood quietly in the snow, I walked up the drive and stood on the porch. My hand still trembled from what had happened. A flashlight beam cut through the living room window, and I thought of my grandfather building this with honest hands. I thought of the way corruption had tried to dictate to the bones of this place who it belonged to. I placed my palm on the weathered banister and, with the mountain breathing around me, I whispered, "We're not finished." Because even though the arrest was real and the evidence clear, the story wasn't over. There were hearings, depositions, insurance claims, permits to reinstate, and fresh piles of bureaucratic paper to fight through. There were also names that would still try to crawl out of the woodwork, old conspirators who might trade a lie for a freedom. But for the first time since I'd seen that padlock, I felt something like hope, and hope, thin and fragile, was better than sleeping. With your rifle beside you and a threat note under your pillow. This was the confrontation I'd wanted, a night where the law finally knocked on the door of those who had hidden behind it. It was messy and frightening and unsparing, but it was at last the beginning of the end. The arrest was only the first hinge swinging open. If the sheriff's cuffs were dramatic, what followed was bureaucratic, long, grinding, and absolute in its own way. Dana told me early on that criminal cases can bring down people, but property and civil restitution do something else. They reach into the ledger of a town and correct its books. She sat across from me at her office table, legal pads and a mug of cold coffee between us, and drew a slow line of what needed to happen next. "We'll file for immediate restoration of title," she said, tapping a pen against her lip. "That puts the property back in your name on paper," she continued, "and stops any new transfers until this matter is fully adjudicated." She also explained we'd open a civil suit for damages, a separate action to recover the value of what they'd done to the land, the renovations they'd made with stolen property, the profits from illegal rentals, the emotional damages for trespass and harassment, and there was the federal criminal investigation, which would lead to indictments for conspiracy and the attempted cover-up of a homicide. There were at least 3 parallel tracks to manage: criminal, civil, and administrative. Each one had its own clock, its own rules, and its own way of revealing truth. The first hearing was procedural. It lasted less than an hour, but it felt like a pivot point. I sat under warm courtroom lights, the wood of the bench familiar like an old tool. Rowe entered, escorted by a deputy I'd once waved to at community picnics. He looked smaller in a suit with a number, less like a man used to making the room silent. The judge, older and blunt, skimmed the files before, asking if there were any objections to the restoration petition. The county attorney, who had visibly shifted from cautious to cooperative in the wake of federal pressure, rose and said the state would not contest the petition. That single concession snapped open a door I hadn't expected. It meant the county no longer wanted the fight. It meant the evidence had made the corruption toxic to anyone who touched it. When the judge signed the temporary order restoring the title to me, I felt a lightness I hadn't felt in years. Not triumph, not exactly. A quiet rightness, like the hinge finally fitting back into place. But restoration on paper didn't put photographs back on mantelpieces or fix the way the Millers had sat in my father's chair and left scuff marks on the stair. That part came later. Through process and patience, Dana filed the civil complaint for conversion, trespass, and punitive damages. She subpoenaed bank records, contracts, emails, and every document that still breathed evidence. We deposed Jonathan in the county conference room under fluorescent lights. He wore a cheap suit and a face that tried to look repentant. His answers were halting, careful, like a man learning how a confession might sound if it had to be useful. Claire's deposition was different. She spoke slowly, but with a clarity I hadn't seen the night she trembled on my porch. She described the signed documents she'd seen, the late-night meetings at the sheriff's home, and the way Jonathan had talked about cleaning up complaints. There were audio files, 2 recordings Ray and I had captured of Jonathan and Rowe, the ones that had precipitated the indictment. Hearing his voice on those tapes, callous, small, certain, made something inside me harden. It was disturbing to realize how casual they'd been about the lives they affected. People, to them, were items on a ledger. They checked boxes. They rounded numbers. They removed names. Words on affidavits turned into motions and motions into orders. Blue Ridge Holdings, finally unmasked, was a paper company with bank accounts that led to shell companies, some in states I'd never heard of, and one in a small offshore jurisdiction. Dana worked with prosecutors to trace the flows, to match wire transfers to invoices that never existed, to show that repairs billed to public funds had gone directly into pockets. The federal prosecutor who handled the case was a woman with a voice like a scalpel. She moved deliberately, cutting through layers of plausible deniability until the truth lay open and sharp. When she presented the evidence to the grand jury, she didn't dramatize anything. She only arranged facts like knives on a tray. The grand jury returned indictments for Roe, Jonathan and Gregory Hensley conspiracy, mail fraud, wire fraud, and obstruction. The homicide investigation into Karen Bates gained new momentum. Claire's testimony suggested pattern and intent, and a re-examination of the original files, including autopsy notes and the first responding officer's report, revealed inconsistencies. It was a sick, small thing to realize that the pattern of control, of blackmail, of threats had likely led to more than one death. The county's complacency had enabled it. News outlets ran deep features. They called it a local scandal with national reverberations. People in the town who'd been quiet for years reached out with stories, lost properties, coerced sales, long ago deaths that had been labeled accidents. Not all of it could be proven. But patterns had weight, and patterns had consequences. The property board was dissolved. Several officials resigned. Investigations opened into other transactions in the county, and other families received subpoenas. There were no quick apologies and headlines, only slow public inventory of wrongs. I watched it all from my porch one evening, coffee cooling in my hands, and felt the town's shadow lift a few inches. People would heal or they wouldn't. That wasn't mine to decide, but at least the record was clearer now. Rebuilding began in earnest. When the title restoration became final, I started pulling permits. Dana handled the legal logistics. I took on the physical work. I learned to plane a board and set a joist again. Sometimes I worked until my fingernails peeled and the sun had long departed. Neighbors, some tentative, some apologetic, offered tools and coffee. One morning, the old man from the diner, Albert, showed up with a wheelbarrow of reclaimed shingles he'd been saving. "You boys got the mountain back," he said, smiling with a small, private satisfaction. Restoration was less an act of construction and more a ritual. Each board I replaced felt like a stitch-in, something torn. I preserved the floor near the fireplace, the one that hid my grandfather's box. I left the marks where years had worn the banister. They were a map of memory, and I used the documents we'd recovered to create a permanent record in the local historical archives, where the truth could be checked by anyone willing to look. The trials were long and ugly. Roe was convicted on multiple counts. The sentences were not swift, but they were real. Jonathan received a lesser sentence, cooperation and a clean plea deal. Hensley, the attorney who'd signed off on dubious transfers, lost his license and faced civil penalties. Blue Ridge Holdings was dissolved and its assets seized where possible. People who had once been complacent tried to repair reputations by testifying against their peers. Some did so convincingly, others with the awkwardness of those who had only recently learned they'd been complicit. Claire entered witness protection for a time. She left the mountain with her son and a reluctance that felt like grief. She wrote me a letter from a new town months later, short, honest, and apologetic. She thanked me for not taking revenge on her. I thought about that a lot. Revenge is a simple, hungry thing. Justice, by contrast, is messy and slow. I had wanted both for a long time. I found that in the end, I wanted truth more than catharsis. There was a hearing for restitution. Dana argued that the Millers had profited from using my property and that the county's complicity exacerbated the harm. The court awarded me compensation for out-of-pocket damages, for emotional distress, and for the years where the house had sat idle while others profited. The money wasn't the point, but it mattered. It allowed me to hire certain specialists who could restore the home properly. An old timber carpenter to replace beams in the style my grandfather had used, a conservator to repair the fireplace. Mantle, the county agreed to a program that reviewed abandoned property procedures and mandated better oversight, prevention measures to curb this kind of corrupt seizure in the future. I had, in a small way, helped change the system. A year later, the house stood whole again, the paint matched, The faded green my grandfather had favored. The porch swing creaked in the evenings where I'd sit and let the mountain speak. People came to visit, sometimes old friends, new neighbors, a reporter who wanted a last quote for a retrospective. I remember one afternoon when a family stopped by while hiking. A little girl asked about the house with big, blank eyes. I told her the simple truth. This place was taken, and then it was given back, I said. She wrinkled her nose in a way that showed all the business of being 6 years old and uninterested in the politics of land. But her father squeezed my shoulder, tears bright in his own eyes. "Thank you," he said, thinking of the countless small recoveries his family had made elsewhere because of what had happened here. There are nights I still wake thinking about what could have happened, about how close the county came to losing more than land. Sometimes I imagine the mountain before any of us were here, quiet, impartial, indifferent to human plots. And I think about how we carved names into it and how sometimes corrupt people try to carve them away. I keep my grandfather's letters in a box on the mantle now, and once a year I take them down and read them aloud. They remind me that property isn't only paper and land. It's memory, it's labor, it's the slow accumulation of small, honest days. If there's a moral to this story, it's not simple. Justice isn't cinematic. It's paperwork, it's patience, it's bravery dressed in the plain clothes of lawyers and investigators and the quiet decisions of people who refuse to look away. If you want a single line, maybe it's this: if you know something isn't right, gather proof, find the right people, and don't be afraid to take the long road. Because sometimes the long road is the one that actually leads home.